I'm not texting, I'm recording my homilies so that I can listen to them later. Looking in a mirror is sometimes really hard, and listening to your own voice is sometimes really hard, but I want to try to get better, so you got to do that. I'm not very good at sewing either, but we're going to try to see if we can put Iranaeus in the Jesus words today. So I think whenever we hear the words, the rain fell and the floods came, I wonder what we think of. Probably 10 years ago, 2008, the floods that we would probably be sitting up to our necks in water right now. But we look at how we rebuild, and we look at how all the grace and generosity and heroism that came from that. I don't want to compare suffering. Everyone has different amounts of suffering and water in their lives, but I'm going to talk about my personal experience with the flood. In 1993, a young married couple, my parents, decided to move to D Avenue, which is about a 5-minute walk that way. And they happened to pick the house. It was about a 100-year-old house at the time, and it was just a house that worked out well for where they wanted to raise their children and where they wanted to live and worship at. And years go by. They raise 2 young boys, myself and my brother, Joshua. And then 2008 rolls around, and we hear the call to be evacuated. And so we leave the house. We go live at right across from St. Jude's Church. There's an assisted living apartments where my grandma lived. And so we lived, the 4 of us, right underneath the apartment where grandma was. So we got snacks and food and talks with grandma anytime we wanted. We just had to go upstairs. Anyway, when we finally we had to wait weeks and weeks to get back in finally, even though the waters had all gone away. And finally, when we finally got back in, we saw this, the glass was broken from the outside because the firemen had to come in and check, make sure that it was safe. There was no bad fumes, there was no falling floor joists. So when we got back in, we were so worried that the 100-year-old piano and the 100-year-old house and the joists and all our stuff on the first floor would be ruined and we'd have to tear the house down. But when we got in, we looked at the stairs of my basement and everything was just caked in mud. I'm sure you know, you've seen it. And when we looked, here's the first floor, and then we looked at the mud line, and it was about 4 inches below that main floor line. And so it just filled up just to the very bottom of the ceiling of the basement and then drained again. So our house, that house that my mom and dad moved into in 1993, when we were looking at it, it's on a slight incline. So and we're the only house in the neighborhood that has that. Just a few inches of incline in the yard, the very small yard, goes up a little bit. So the house sits about 4 to 5 inches above the rest of the street and the rest of the house. And so I bring that in because when Jesus says the rains fell, the floods came, if you listen to my words, you're like a wise man who built his house on rock. But Jesus says you're like a wise man. That doesn't mean you are a wise man. And this is an analogy that Jesus uses, but it's not always exactly the same because we didn't really build that house. We didn't really build the foundation. We just moved into it, and God's grace was guiding us way back then to move into this house, to keep us there so we can continue to live here, so we can continue to walk to St. Patrick's. So we don't really do it all on our own. I know the gospel, Jesus had to speak in very simple words, and it seems simple. Okay, build your house, or you're like a fool. You're a wise man, or you're a fool. You do it all yourself. It's up to you. I'm giving you the tools to build it. But really, it's God's grace that intertwines and works with us and our decisions and everything that leads up to culminating events like the flood. So the point is, we don't do it on our own. We work with God. We cooperate with His grace in many unknown ways in our daily life. Right now, you're at Mass here. You probably woke up. You maybe had a cup of coffee. Now you're going to go about your day, do your errands. This is one of the things that you're building your foundation on, is the Eucharist here, receiving the Lord at the altar here. This is one of the things that's helping to build the foundation that grace just injects into your life. And now we move to St. Iranaeus, who helped smash Gnosticism, which is a belief that says it's a secret. Faith and salvation is like a secret society and a secret knowledge that you get to work on and discover on your own. So once again, we don't build the foundation ourselves, and we don't do it alone. We do it all together. Salvation is open to everyone. Same thing with having a great foundation. It's open to everyone, so that we can be even more than 5 inches above the water. We want to be even higher than that. So as we go forward into this day, let us remember that we don't build our foundations alone. We cooperate with God's grace. And those foundations are open to ourselves, everyone in our families, and everyone that we encounter throughout the day. Amen.